Joseph Joestar is a very proud man who holds his subscription to the New World Review amongst his greatest achievements in life, primarily because it does grant him regular JoJo content straight into his YouTube feed. However, when Joseph hears that someone is not subscribed to the New World Review, then he has a tendency to make this face. So please subscribe. This face is weird, I don't like it, and I need it to stop. Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga, and today we are going to begin what will, in theory, be potentially an incredibly long journey as we attempt to catalog the various stands in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in a new series titled The Stand Encyclopedia. However, before we can launch into individual stand examination, we first need to actually define stands themselves, because these existences take on a wide variety of forms, and if I was to start any entry by saying something like, well, this stand is a close-range artificial humanoid, well, what meaning does that have without defining all of that business first? So today we are here to lay the groundwork, and we're going to begin with a very simple question. What is a stand? Well, essentially, a stand is a combination of life energy that manifests itself into a particular form, taking great inspiration from the user's fighting spirit, psyche, intellectual curiosity, or they can even form themselves in direct response to a particular need. Now, obviously, that's a very vague definition, and purposely so, because stands can establish themselves in a limitless array of outcomes, although for the most part, they do tend to share a set of common features that does allow us to define them. Now, generally, a user is bound to their stand, meaning that if something damages a stand, then the user themselves incurs damage, and in the large majority of cases, should a stand user die, then the stand itself will disappear. The large majority of cases, not all. And as for where stands come from in the first place, the sad fact is, at least in the first JoJo universe, you must be born with a stand or the potential to manifest one later in life, which would occur through profound mental strength. With that said, there is also a quick and dirty way to do it, which is by being pierced with an arrow made from an otherworldly metal, and if the person being pierced was born with stand potential, then it will be unlocked, and if not, then they'll die. Pretty big gamble. Interestingly enough, having a stand unlocked in this way also results in a person's descendants being able to manifest their stands if they possess the potential, which is one of the primary catalyzing features of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure as we know it. Meanwhile, in the alternate universe continuity of JoJo, these arrows obviously don't exist, and the primary method by which stand development seems to occur is via mysterious shenaniganry regarding the Saint's corpse. Now, as for what kind of stands can emerge, let's get into the convoluted classification system, which begins by being able to divide stands into three broad types, each of which are going to have a slew of subtypings, but the original three are ability types, form types, and special types. And very notably, these typings are not exclusive, and any given stand will often be distinguished by being classified into at least two of those broad types, but this will make much more sense as we get into it. Starting with the ability typing classification, and this sector tends to focus on allotting a stand based on the range of its abilities. So for example, a common subcategory we have here would be a close range power type, which are generally your standard punch ghosts who can't be more than a few meters away from their user at any given time, or I guess they can, but they become much less effective. In addition to this, their particular abilities might be able to be used at range, but they themselves do need to stick quite close by. And a classic example of this would be Star Platinum, which has an effective range of 2 meters from Jotaro. Then we also have the long distance operation types, which are stands able to operate at great range away from their users. And a simple example of this would be Hierophant Green, wielded by Kakyoin. What's more important to note here though is that being a long distance operation type does not automatically mean that the stand's ability is long distance. It may still be a very close range power, it can just be performed far away from the stand's user. Now these first two subclassifications are still types of stands that remain under the control of their users, but there are ability types that operate on their own known as automatic stands, which act, as I said, on their own under a very simple set of commands. But they also have the distinction of being able to act at incredible distances away from the user. However, they are very basic. And once you figure out effectively the one thing that the stand is basing its decisions on, then they are usually quite easily defeated. For example, Killer Queen's sheer heart attack ability is a far distance autopilot type that chooses its target based on who or whatever has the highest temperature. And very interestingly, within the world of automatic stands are the posthumous types, which either activate or endure after their user's death, albeit with the same basic programming as automatic stands. And Notorious Big from Part 5 would be a fantastic illustration of this, which attacks what it detects as the fastest moving object within its range. And finally, for ability types, we also have range irrelevant stands, which generally comprise the most terrifying and powerful stands within the series. However, the base definition of this class are stands with abilities where range is, well, like it says, irrelevant. So anything that manipulates time would be plonked here, including the World, King Crimson, and Mandem. However, these stands are kind of crazy because many of their abilities have the potential to affect the the entirety of existence as we know it, and yes, I am looking at you, made in heaven. But casting ability types aside, we can also be much more superficial and identify stands according to their form type, which comprises 5 subcategories. And first up, we have the common natural humanoid stands, which are exactly as it sounds. Stands which take on an organic humanistic appearance, although they obviously don't have to mirror humanity perfectly, because things like Avdol's Magician's Red falls into this category, despite the fact that it does have the head of a birdie. But for a more classic example, we could turn to Josuke's Crazy Diamond, which is effectively just a big old dude bruh with some fairly insane powers of its own. Then we move to artificial humanoid stands, which are almost the same thing, except they achieve a humanist appearance through some sort of less than organic construction, like Silver Chariot, which looks like a medieval robot, or one of the stands that creeps me out the most, Death 13, which is cobbled together with various non-organic matter. They would both be artificial humanoid stands. And to keep the sheer excitement of knowledge we have going, we also have natural non-humanoid stands, which I feel like you may get the gist of by now. They are anything that takes on construction through organic matter, but does not resemble a human appearance. And the first one of those that always comes to mind to me is Stray Cat, who is a delightful cat plant. And of course, to contrast that, we also have artificial non-humanoid stands, which you probably get, yeah? Non-human forms crafted from artificial materials, like Bastet was, literally a PowerPoint. Or much more interestingly, in the realm of Part 8, we have the very cool existence known as Paper Moon King. But quite possibly the most exciting subcategory of the form types are the phenomenon stands, which basically means anything that does not fit into the previous 4 explored categories. And to be clear, what that means is that it cannot manifest as a humanoid form, and it cannot be constructed from natural or artificial materials. So what does that leave us with? Well, phenomenon stands often exhibit themselves as supernatural occurrences or an ability granted to the user directly. Say for example, Achtung Baby, wielded by Shizuka Joestar, which allows her to turn herself and a select radius around her invisible. Although the power doesn't need to affect the user, it can also be applied to targets and victims, such as Part 7's Scary Monsters, which allowed its user to infect living beings with a virus that inevitably turned them into dinosaurs, which is pretty fun. For more fun though, we're now going to dive into the third broad classification, being special types. And I have to note right at the beginning, this is not an officially recognized category in the series, but more of a framework that fans have developed over time, spotting certain trends, and I for one do very much appreciate its existence, so we are going to dive into it here. But firstly, and most boringly, we have bound stands, which as the name implies, are directly tied to some form of material or object, and which also goes on to mean that regular humans can often see their effects actually. And the very first example of this we saw in the series was Strength, which was bound to a ship and controlled by an orangutan, because that's JoJo, and it allowed said orangutan to manipulate the ship as he saw fit. A more fun example though would probably be Superfly, which was bound to a transmission tower in Morio and had the ability to trap people within it, as well as reflect all damage dealt to it. So something of an invincible transmission tower. Moving on within the special type, we also have colony stands, which are made up of multiple conjured beings, which can range from small handfuls, like Mista Sex Pistols, or a terrifying army of 60 patchwork soldiers, as seen in Nijimura's Bad Company. And the main advantage of this brand of stand is rapidly increased utility and significantly less damage taken if part of your stand was to be wounded. Plus, if not acted upon quickly, these small but powerful beings can very swiftly overwhelm most opponents. Keeping Mista Sex Pistols in mind though, another special type is that of a sentient stand, which can obviously be seen here, as each of Mista's pistols have their own personality, going on to interact with each other, Mista, and even other stand users. And in some cases, sentient stands have become exceptionally important characters in their own right, such as Foo Fighters from Part 6, who is basically a sentient colony of plankton that operate via a hive mind and can infiltrate and control the bodies of others, which has led to the Stone Ocean classic character Foo Fighters, who was aptly named directly after the stand. In addition to this, the special type can also comprise shared stands, which allow a stand to have multiple users at once or over time. An example of the latter would be Anubis from Stardust Crusaders, who practiced the art of user hopping, and fun fact, Anubis would also be classified as a sentient stand as well. And I suppose you could also call King Crimson a shared stand to some degree, as it was used by both Diavolo and Doppio. Not really so much what we're talking about here though. Finally, we also have evolving stands, and these guys are very exciting and have resulted in some of the most ridiculous power that we have seen in the series. But basically this refers to stands that have the capacity to evolve for whatever reason, such as Koichi's Echoes, which took on new forms based on an axe system, and each time they had different powers and restrictions placed on them, generally becoming far stronger with each act, but very much their own unique existences. And a stand can also go on to evolve via that arrow thingy that we spoke about before, which when striking a user a second time, can have the effect of the original stand developing a new sub-ability, which occurred in Part 4 when Yoshikage Kira was pierced a second time, and resulting in Killer Queen's absurd Bites the Dust ability, which can place the targets, and thus the world I guess, in a temporal loop. So it's not as simple like, ooh, I have a new fun power to play play with. This evolution process does generally result in some pretty world-changing stuff. And that can be seen on an even more profound level when the stand itself is pierced with the arrow, and then it can evolve into its Requiem form, which has been seen in the series in 2 incarnations, one of which was Silver Chariot Requiem, which had the power to swap the souls of living organisms, but we also got to see it in the form of Gold Experience Requiem, which had a strangely esoteric power to revert anything back to zero, which is far more terrifying than it sounds. So Requiem stands are pretty damn serious business. An evolution of a stand can also occur through a mysterious process hinted at, but not technically detailed in Part 6, whereby it involves the fusing of souls with a stand user and crafting specific gravitational requirements, which, yeah, I know sounds very obscure, but it did result in the insanity that is Made in Heaven. So yeah, in conclusion, stand evolution is madness. And that is our 3 broad typings and their subcategories. So in theory, with this information equipped, we should be able to identify and classify any stand. And in fact, let's just test that out right now. Let's take Moody Blues, for example, and now we know that we could classify that as a close-range artificial humanoid stand. Oh, don't we all feel smart now? One last thing though, all stands in the series are further dissected through a parameter system that measures the 6 key classes of statistics, those being destructive power, speed, range, persistence, precision, and development potential, with each state being assigned a rank from A to E, and it generally provides us with a nice solid visual cheat sheet of a stand's general strength and weaknesses, one that we will apply going forward in this encyclopedia, although they are quite inconsistent. So just a warning there. And that does pretty much do it for this prologue to the Stand Encyclopedia, and I suppose next time we will be picking up with our first official entry, which is going to be Star Platinum, wielded by the one and only Jotaro Kujo. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm honestly pretty nervous about this whole idea, because JoJo views on this channel are hard enough to come by as it is, but we're going to give it a go anyway. But what do you guys think? Please do let me know down in the comments below, and if you are keen for some more JoJo content, then please do go and check out some of my other videos, or even subscribe to the channel for regular JoJo wonder delivered straight into your YouTube feed. But for now, this has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.